And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Marino, alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Episode 103 of the Top Podcast. It was an eventful weekend. Good weekend of college football. Another great slate of games. Spanning into the next day of pro football. The NFL had great games this weekend. I know everybody enjoyed the Toy Story, I don't know what you want to call it. It was interesting to say the least. I didn't watch it live. I've seen clips and highlights of it. Looked pretty damn good for probably they only had maybe a couple of weeks to get that done. For working like live, it was impressive. For them doing that on the fly, it was very, very impressive. Dan, how you doing this Tuesday evening?
It is the Tuesday. It is the day. We have a show today, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's get it going.
Jeremiah Souders in chat early today. What's up, Jeremiah? I don't know if Dan's having a bad hair day. I think Dan's just feeling backwards hat day. Dan, what do you say?
Hell, I don't know. Let's find out.
Live reveal. Okay, no, that it's pristine. It's pristine.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
pretty dang good. It's
fine.
Pretty dang good. Dan, let's get right into it. Hot topics of the day. Starting us off, what is more satisfying, a blowout win or a close game where you win at the end? Obviously, this is very topical, seeing as Georgia's had multiple or couple blowout wins this year and just had a close game this week. What do you say, Dan?
All right, so the way that this resonates with me is that it's a close win when you are the one who scores towards the end and captures the victory. If it's a good team that you're playing, if it's a good game, like Alabama in the SEC championship game or Ohio State, to me, that is way more satisfying than just blowing the doors off of somebody. Because typically, if you blow the doors off of somebody, they shouldn't have never been in the game in the first place. So I love close competitive games to go back and forth to keep you at the edge of the seat. And then, coming out on top at the end of the ball game obviously makes it even more fantastic. So, like, to me, what is more satisfying and like what I revel in, for days and days and weeks and sometimes years is that close game where the very end you capture the victory, and the added bonus is that you get to break somebody's heart, and that's just lovely when it comes to sports. So, Harrison, what is your take?
Dan out here reveling in other people's misery is what I just heard. Dan, I'm along the same lines as you. The close game where you win at the end are a little bit more satisfying. I can say the personal experience, Georgia's late fourth quarter comeback against Alabama was much more satisfying than, not to say the TCU win wasn't satisfying, but nothing quite beat the feeling of Georgia beating Alabama in the fourth quarter, if you know what I mean, with the Keely Ringo pick six. That one just felt different. Maybe it's because of the first one that I experienced in my lifetime. Dan was around back in the 1940s when Georgia won their original title. No, he wasn't. He was. Dan, you're young enough to be very young when Georgia won in 80. But, yeah, so it was different. Than when they blew them out 65-7 in the national championship game. Dan, number 2, as he's going to get mad at me afterwards. No, I'm just joking. Dan's used to the age jokes now. The 2 cronies in the chat have had done it enough already.
They're here.
The 3 of us. Dan, what is the most anxious you've been before a game? What game was it? I'm curious. We talked about it. There was a couple kind of flowing through our head, a couple like annual matchups that always make you nervous. What do you say, sir?
I've ever gotten to thinking about it. I obviously the first championship is the one where you would say you were the most anxious, and I was telling you that I've been really, really anxious before some Braves playoff games. I remember being extremely anxious before the Cardinals Braves game where we ended up giving up way too many runs in the first 2 innings. I mean, that game was over so fast. It broke my heart. It honestly did. But I started thinking about it after we talked, and really the game I was most anxious for was the USC game. So the game out in California, which was the Rose Bowl. I don't know what it was. It's like we finally got there. We got back there. And I just, for whatever reason, that Rose Bowl, I was nervous to death. And then the game, the way that it played out, like I never got to relax. I think I I may have been in tears by the end of that night because it was just like the emotions, just a roller coaster of the emotions, and not tears like it was just like stress tears. Like I just couldn't handle it anymore. That entire day, from waking up that morning, doing whatever it was I did that day, to being over. We were at a friend's house for a party, and there was about 30 to 40 dog fans there, and we were sitting in their theater watching the game, and it was just insane the entire day. I probably consumed a lot of alcohol that day. So that probably contributed to the anxiousness. Well, actually, I was less anxious after that, but the tears probably at the end. So, yeah, it was, I think it was that game. It has to be that game, the Rose Bowl.
That's a good answer. I didn't even think about that, to be honest with you. The Rose Bowl is actually a really good choice because it's not as recent as the national championship. Dan, I'm gonna go with a more recent one, and it's the Braves Dodgers NLCS back, I guess 2 years ago now. Wow. Um, every time the Braves plays the Dodgers, you get nervous. Even afterwards when we knocked them out and won the World Series, it's always like, dang, they've had our number in the past. Will they get it back? Kind of same thing with Georgia and Alabama. No matter how many times you beat Alabama and Nick Saban, you're always going to be sitting here wondering, man, do they do it? Do they have enough to beat you again? Shout out to our boy Stoddard. I made him a managing moderator. Shout out to Jay Will as well. I just promoted you to a moderator as well. We got the two Smurfs in the chat now, moderating all of the ghost that we have commenting on our videos, Dan. As in ghost nobody. It's a ghost town over here. But hey, that's just a joke. Anyways, Dan, we have a special rant for you. Yeah, I'm going with Braves Dodgers. I look forward to playing them, hopefully seeing the Braves play them in the playoffs. I hope we match up with those guys again, get to break their hearts one last time, as I'm sure Dan would love Ronald Acuna just walk it off in the bottom of the ninth to send the Braves back to the World Series. That would be beautiful. But I'm here for now, but I got a work call. I got to set up for an interview. Hey, Stoddard, you're here. You're present. J-Will, shout out to you as well. You're both present. Really appreciate y'all. Dan, topical rant. This may send Stoddard away early, but we'll see. I don't know where you're going with this one. So, Dan, tell us about your rant this week.
The Atlanta Falcons. I can't quit you. I hate you so much. I hate the Falcons so much. I made a decision when we moved here when I was 7 years old. I was a Packers fan because I was from Green Bay, and I loved the Packers, and I never really left the Packers. But I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to be a Falcons fan because you guys are Packers fans or Bears fans, and I'm going to be a Falcons fan. This is going to be my team. This is the town that I moved to. This is going to be my town. What I didn't know was that was a terrible decision, and I should have never made that decision, but I did. And I got on the Falcons bandwagon from the time I was 7 years old, which there wasn't a bandwagon. There was plenty of room. Hell, I had a front row ticket. I was the only one on that wagon. And I suffered through all the misery of all the losing seasons, of how bad we were, how terrible we were. And then, I got rewarded when we, got Glanville and we started winning some football games. And then we went back to being shitty again. And then, we got Mike Smith. He started winning. Of course, I went through the Mike Vick stuff. And of course, that's the biggest nut crunch ever, is that the most talented player probably in the history of the NFL is on your team. And then he goes to jail. He goes to prison. I mean, it's not like a normal fan base. It's not like a guy tears his knee up, can't play anymore. Ours has to go to freaking prison. Okay. So we got that. Then we start winning again. Then we start losing again. And then we get Dan Quinn and we go to the Super Bowl. Not only do we go to the Super Bowl, we're kicking the shit out of somebody at halftime and we end up losing that football game. Right. So I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not ever going to root for the Falcons again. I just hate this team so much. I'm done. And then, I get to be in a friend group with you morons, and you start talking about the Falcons, and I'm like, you're not gonna suck me back in, and of course you suck me back in, and you're telling me that Arthur Smith is a good coach, and I'm like, he's not a good coach. He wasn't any good at Tennessee. I don't know why the hell we hired him, but we hired him for whatever reason, and I'm not really sure what that reason is, because what he does, it's inspiring. Hell, at least Dan Quinn had freaking bro t-shirts made up, like win the moment or whatever the hell, like broisms. And Coach Bro, bring him back. Shit, at least he was fun to cover in the media. I mean, we got a guy with a freaking mustache on. They always say don't trust a white guy with a mustache, but here he is with this like fuzz buster on his face. I don't know what the hell that thing is, and he's a horrible football coach. His play calling is terrible. You got Dave Ragone. Like, let Dave Ragone call the damn plays. Do something, because this is uninspiring. And then, I was going to give Ritter the benefit of the doubt because I thought maybe this guy could do something, like, hey, we took him a flyer. He's freaking awful. He's so bad. Like, I don't even know who Hollins is, but apparently he's a wide receiver, and he told him to go fuck off. So I don't even know. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. And I mean, then the Falcons time window, they're the only thing on. And I just want to watch my team, our team, the Falcons be successful. And I can't. And I chose this life. And I don't know what else to say. I hate the fucking Falcons. Harrison.
I've been waiting for that. I've been waiting for us to either get Dan's celebration because the Falcons are a 10-win football team and they're going to the playoffs, or they're 2-2 and Dan's ready to jump out a window. But I love this comment. This had me cracking up. He said, you actually chose to be a Falcons fan. Unfortunately, I was born in this misery. That's a good one. Dan, you said don't trust a white man with a mustache. Dude, come on. White men with mustache are getting girls now. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Travis has a mustache. Like, come on. What more confirmation could you need that men with mustache are trustworthy? But I agree with Stoddard, and to your point, I think somebody else should be calling plays for the Atlanta Falcons. I just don't think it's worked. I think there's nothing wrong with the way they structure their team. They've gotten first-round playmakers in Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, but they aren't utilizing those playmakers outside of Bijan Robinson. Like, they just aren't.
Well, I will give Joe Hamilton a lot of credit because Joe Hamilton is the ultimate team guy. Joe Hamilton never goes after. Brian Finneran goes after people all the time. So if you ever want to listen to Brian Finneran attack somebody, go listen to him. B-Fin will tear your ass apart if you're not playing up to standard. But, Joe Hamilton on 680 the other day said something that like resonated with me is that, the best receivers in the league don't get one-on-one coverage. Drake London gets one-on-one coverage. Kyle Pitts gets one-on-one coverage almost every single play, and they still can't get open, and that's a real problem. And his point was if you gave Jefferson one-on-one coverage the entire game, that man would have 20 receptions and 700 yards in a football game. You could not stop him. Jamar Chase, Waddle, Hill, those types of guys, like you give them one-on-one coverage, they are going to eat you alive, but yet they can cover these guys one-on-one. Is that because they don't – and Finneran has called London out and Pitts out because they don't run their routes hard all the time. And, when the quarterback – so, it's kind of hard to make that statement about Ritter about being complete trash because, if you're trying to throw to a spot to a receiver who's supposed to be running a skinny post full speed and he's jogging halfway through the route, I mean, obviously it's not going to work, right? So, I don't know. Like, the offense on this team is bad. I will say, and you guys told me before the season that you thought this defense was going to be good with Nielsen as the defensive coordinator, and I didn't know. I just said okay, but yeah, this defense has been really really good. Imagine if we would have gotten a high pick as a defensive back, how good they would have been. Holy cow!
Yeah, the defense has been great. As a non-Falcons fan, it has been. I mean, the turnaround has been huge, especially in the secondary itself. You look at where they were last year, I believe they were 25th, 26th. They were in the bottom tier in passing yards allowed per game. Now they're in the top 10. Like, talk about a turnaround. They did it pretty quickly, and they're playing at a high level. They just got to get the offense on track, and I don't know how they do that. To me, it starts with the head coach. It starts with Arthur Smith getting a new play caller. Obviously, it's so late in the season now. You're mid-season. You're not going to go out there and hire an offensive coordinator. But if you do change coordinators, if you change play callers, it's going to have to come within. And like Dan said, you have somebody on staff that can call plays. You have multiple people on staff that can call plays for the Falcons offensively. Guys, let's get into Georgia content. A lot to discuss here with Georgia, obviously coming off of a 27-20 win over Auburn. Dan, not what we were expecting, to say the least. I think both you and I had Georgia maybe win this game by at least 14 to 21 points. I don't remember our predictions for this, but I mean, yeah, I don't know anyone in the world that said that, was saying Georgia was going to win by a touchdown or trail for the majority of this football game. I didn't see it coming. Now, yes, Georgia has had slow starts over the last few games, and they started slow here, but it never was they're down 10-0, and unless other than South Carolina. What were your general thoughts and takeaways from this game? Let's just do general recap for now before we get into the deep stuff.
Well, like I told you, and I think you very accurately pointed out the fact that my emotions have not gotten the better of me with Georgia this season because I haven't watched anything live. So I have the advantage of watching stuff back. But every game has been almost exactly the same. So it's like once Georgia decides they want to play, it's the game's not in doubt anymore. So my overall recap was it's been almost the same on every single game this year where they look terrible early. Well, I won't say terrible. That's not fair to say terrible. They don't look terrible early. They just slow early. They're slow early. They move slow. They react slow. They're not crisp early. And then, as the game progresses, the Georgia that we expect shows up, right? So my general takeaway is that every single game so far this year has been almost a exact replica, a carbon copy. The final scores have been different. We've won all the games. The results have been the same, but the momentum has been the same. It's just like a slow burn. It's like one of those movies where the last 15 minutes of the movie is phenomenal, and you're like, oh wow, this is one of my favorite movies ever. But then, really, if you think about it, the first hour and 15 minutes of it are terrible. It's only the last 30 minutes that are great. So that's my general recap. And I know that's vague as hell, and we'll get into some stuff. But Harrison, it's just been a slow build, and then it's like a roller coaster. Once we get to the top of the hill and we start that descent into the actual ride, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it like you said, we start here, down here where you can't even see my hand. Then it kind of goes up, 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 up. You reach your climax, and then tails off a little bit. Well, I don't know if it tails off at all, actually.
It speeds up.
It speeds up. Yeah, it speeds up. Dan, I was bringing up the drive chart. That's why I was a little late to respond for this game. The drive chart, Georgia had 5 possessions in the first half. 5. Some of these other games, they've been getting 4 or 3. Like, we're talking barely anything, not much to evaluate because Georgia's barely on the field. And I'm looking at it here. Let's go over this real quick. You had a punt your first drive, a turnover, the interception, obviously. Another, hold up. Yeah. Or I messed this up. No, punt, interception, come back, you score a touchdown to answer Auburn's. You get a field goal the next drive. You punt, and a turnover and a fumble, and that pretty much just that's how the game started for you. You had maybe a positive play or two, a positive drive or two, and it felt like Georgia take a few steps back. To me, Dan, I don't think the offense played terrible. I really don't. When I went on social media and I saw that everybody was bashing Bobo and Carson Beck, I was shocked because I watched that game. I watched the very same game as everybody else. And yes, Beck threw an interception. And yes, he didn't have multiple passing touchdowns, as people, I don't know why, have come to expect. In every win, a quarterback should have 3 or 4 passing touchdowns. Just not going to happen. Sometimes you don't have that. But to me, the biggest concern, the biggest disappointment was the defense. You gave up over 200 yards rushing for the first time in, I believe it was 5 years. Might have been the most rushing yards they've given up in over 5 years. Dan, Joel Klatt put out something today, and let me pull it up here on my phone because I saved the image because it had a graphic, and it showed where Georgia's rushing yards per carry allowed ranked in each year. 2019, second. First in 2020, second in 2021, and third in 2022. You know where Georgia ranks now? 67th.
Yep.
They're not the same. And we had a segment on this last week. Dan, you brought this up. Why are we comparing this Georgia team to the Georgia teams of the past? Because that's not who they're being compared to. It's not who they're having to play. They're not having to play the 2021 Georgia team. They're having to play the 2023 Alabama team. They're having to play the 2023 Auburn team. And I don't bring that up to say, here, look, Georgia's regressed, because I think everybody knows this is the same team. But it's just a point of reference. Run defense was very concerning. I don't think that game plan, Auburn passing for only 88 yards, is sustainable long term. Like, you're going to have to pass the football. Question for me now is, can somebody else do it better? Can somebody else replicate what Auburn did to an extent and maybe put together a lot more passing yards, a lot more success through the air, and beat Georgia? That was kind of, I don't. Somebody said it was a reflex, a common reflex for Georgia fans to come out here and blame Bobo and Carson Beck. It's just the natural thing to do. But man, I don't know how you can watch that football game and say Carson Beck and Mike Bobo are the problem. I just can't.
Well, it's the thing is that you can't fathom that Kirby Smart or Coach Boom would be the problem, right? Because they've always been okay, Muschamp has never been a good head coach. He's never been good anywhere as a head coach, but he's been outstanding as a defensive coordinator pretty much everywhere he's been. And then Kirby Smart was arguably one of the best defensive coordinators college football's ever seen when he was with Nick Saban. And then his defenses have been absolutely ridiculous since he's been here. Now, we have gone through some personnel. It's hard to fathom that those two could be a problem. And I'm not saying, and I am not indicating, and I am not alleging that either one of those two guys are a problem. And this defense is not as terrible as people make it out to be. But there is something that is true. There's a saying in the world, and sayings are sayings for a reason, right? There's a saying is that perception is reality, right? Well, when you have watched Georgia's teams in the past, their defensive line mauled people. Absolutely mauled people like a lion eating like a chipmunk in the woods. It was like you had big Jordan Davis coming through the line, swallowing up a running back violently in the backfield and dropping them for a loss, right? But now you have an image of the running backs making contact with our defensive linemen and winning that collision, right? So the optics of them pushing you back, their offensive line moving you back, resetting the line of scrimmage, creating an advantage for their team. Like, just the optics of that, it is so unsettling because we haven't seen it in so long that other teams can push us around a little bit. And it's not for the entire game, right? Georgia has so much depth and so much talent that they win out by the end of the game. But early in the football game, while everybody's healthy and everybody's fresh, there are plays where offensive linemen push our defensive players around. There are plays where their backs collide with our linebackers and they win that encounter, right? And we are so not used to that right now. And then on the offensive line, defensive linemen winning, ripping through, getting through like uncontested to the quarterback, hitting our running back 3-4 yards in the backfield. We have been so spoiled the last couple of years with our offensive line just mauling the defensive line, pushing them. We have been so spoiled. Our running backs, when they have a collision, they're just blowing through people. Chubb, Michelle, all these guys, like Swift. The list goes on and on, right? We are not that dominant up front on the offense or defensive line right now. And the optics of that are very unsettling, where it might not actually be as bad as we think it is, but the optics of it aren't good, right? So it's just what you see. And sometimes the emotion of what you're watching gets the better of you and you have a reaction to it. And I think that's where a lot of this vitriol from the fans is coming from, is because they watch a play and they have gotten to the point where they know that we're going to dominate every position on every play. And this year, for whatever reason, early in the football game, we're getting pushed around a little bit. And he goes, not severe. It's just a little bit. We're getting pushed around, and other guys are having a little bit of success. We have beat the hell out of every single team for so long that, like, when we get pushed back, people don't know how to handle it. But that's part of football.
Yeah. Like you said, it's for some reason Georgia hasn't figured it out up front on either side. To me, I'm a little.
But they have at the end of the game. It's just the beginning. We're just getting pushed around a little bit. That's
slow
all.
Start. Yeah, slow start. All starts slow start. Where you want to put the blame on of that is up to you. I think the slow starts is still kind of perplexing to Kirby Smart, at least when he's asked about it in the press conferences. Obviously, he's not going to be very straightforward with his answers when you ask him stuff about slow starts and, the scheme of Georgia's either defense or offense. He won't be very front facing with you on that one because he doesn't want to get into all those, details for whatever reason. But then the next takeaway I had from this game was obviously Carson Beck. He has been a talking point among mainstream media and Georgia media, local Georgia media, is his strong play. I read you off his stat line, his stat line from each quarter, and I think it's very fair to say that he I don't think struggled in the first half. I don't think that's fair to say. Yes, he had the interception on what looked to me it was a concept Georgia runs all the time. I believe they had a big post to the bottom, and they had, I believe it was Marcus Rosemary-Jack Saint. They had a deep over from Bowers. I believe it was Ra or Dominic Lovett running a post, and Marcus Rosemary-Jack Saint on a dig, 10 to 12 yard dig. Georgia throws all the time, even with Stetson Bennett and Todd Monken. The 10 to 12 backside dig was a pass they made often. It was a concept they ran multiple times under Todd Monken. They're running it now, despite what people say about Bobo having a different offense. It's not the offense that is different. It's not the playbooks that it's different. It's just the flavor. Just what he calls, when he calls it, is different because it's two different people. But I read off the stat line. I'm going to read it off here. First quarter, Beck was 4 of 7 with one interception, 28 yards. Second quarter, he was 3 of 6 for 49 yards. And third quarter, he was 8 of 10 for 88 yards. And then come the fourth quarter, he is 8 of 10 for 148 yards and a touchdown. You tell me. I've given you the numbers for you to decide. Now, if you want to go back and watch the game, you want to go back and watch each half and decide for yourself. But to me, when I watch it and I come back on the stat sheet and I look at it, Carson Beck improved tremendously throughout this ball game. Like, yes, it may have not have been the perfect start that everybody wants, but I can promise you this. Every quarterback in the past 10 years hasn't had a perfect start every other game. Hasn't played perfect every game. I can promise you Stetson Bennett didn't play perfect every game. And the next 10 quarterbacks over the next 20-some years aren't going to have perfect starts to every game. But I can tell you this, not many. It's going to be hard to find somebody that did what Carson Beck did coming in to his first road game against, despite what people want to say, despite what the optics say of facing an Auburn team, as Dan the optics, as Dan said, of facing an Auburn team that just got beat pretty bad by Texas A&M. You go into Jordan Hare in the Deep South Oilers rivalry, and you only come out with a 7-point win. 7-point win. But my point was, you're down 10-0, Dan. 10-0 at some point. No, was it 10? Was it 10?
It was 10-0. Yes, it was.
It was 10-0. You come out 10-0, and your quarterback, mind you, first game on the road as a starter, comes out, leads you on a 98-yard drive. 98-yard drive, ends in a touchdown. You're on the board. There's not many people that can do that. Like, that is hard for somebody who just threw a pick, somebody who was down 10-0 on the road in that hostile environment for the very first time, not to get not to get rattled, not to have the deer in headlights moment of, oh crap, what do I do? Like, there was times with Stetson Bennett, even in his last year against Ohio State, even against Alabama in the national championship game, where he you could see him get rattled. It didn't affect him for the whole game. He would recompose himself and come back and play, but there were moments you're like, oh crap, what are you doing? Carson Beck didn't have that on Saturday. Carson Beck was pretty consistent in the second half of completing his passes, going through his reads, making the right decisions, and leading Georgia down the field to go win the game. That was pretty stunning to me, because we've seen other quarterbacks on the road for their first time, Dan, and they've lost it. They lose control. They lost their composure. Remember Dewan Mathis after that hit by Bumper Pool on the sideline?
Yep.
Wasn't the same player after that.
Ever again.
Ever.
To this day, ever again.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more backstory to him himself, with the
Well,
with all that. But he went on. My point being, he went on the road, first start. Georgia's down, not playing their best game. He gets that hit, and after that, the Dewan Mathis era in Athens kind of ended.
well, here's the thing: if you're gonna try to tear Carson Beck apart, there are plays that he misses, right? I mean, obviously there are things that he doesn't do correctly. There are a couple of misses here or there. The guy is playing good quarterback, and like Georgia's a program where they are so talented that you just need competent quarterback play to be successful in these games, and he's given you that at the bare minimum. And I think there are times where he has elevated his play to an exceptional level, and that's the part about it is everybody expects him to be exceptional on every play. Well, hell, Patrick Mahomes isn't exceptional on every play. I mean, did you guys watch the Jets game? I mean, Patrick Mahomes was awful for the majority of the game. They won the game. Some people would say the referees won the game, but at the end of the day, they won the game. But Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, and he's not perfect all the time. So I don't understand why we expect a guy who is starting for the very first time at college to be perfect every play. It's just not realistic. And it doesn't matter who you have at quarterback. I mean, it's just hard for me, Harrison, to continue to defend this stuff because it's absolutely laughable. The guy has given you more than competent football out of the quarterback position, and at times he's given you excellent play. And like that 98-yard drive coming off of an interception, like driving them down the field to get 7 points when you're down 10-0 on the road in a hostile environment. And it was loud. It was loud. Kirby Smart even acknowledged how loud it was. I don't know, Harrison. I think we're going to beat a dead horse with this one, and it's going to be all year long. There are going to just be people who are just unhappy for whatever reason. I think Carson Beck did a great job. I think he's only going to get better. There's nothing about him that I've seen so far to this point that makes me think he's going to get worse. I don't see a regression coming. Georgia's getting healthier, so that by the virtue of them getting healthier, they're going to be better. So I think Carson Beck did more than fine for his first road game, and it's not even like he had a tune-up road game where he got to go play. I don't know, like
Vanderbilt in a
Vanderbilt.
non-hostile environment.
Right. I mean, it was a conference game against a rival, the South's oldest rivalry. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy. Carson Beck is fine. I told you, I didn't even really want to talk that much about Carson Beck because I don't think he's a problem at all.
Well, and that's why I'm going to segue it to kind of the next point of this conversation about the offense before we get into the defense. When you talked about improvement within Carson Beck, you don't see a regression coming. I'm with you on that one. I don't see a regression coming at all because I just think he's getting better with each, start. That is, Kirby Smart said something post game about him hitting the backside of a play against cover 2, like just something where just in game progression from Carson Beck shown there. I haven't found the play. I need to go find it, see if I can find it. Did a great job. Apparently, Kirby Smart was impressed enough to bring it up post game. But let's talk about this offense, Dan, because through the first 3 or 4 weeks of the college football season, I think the one thing we've talked about with this offense is obviously the slow starts. You want to see them start faster. You want to see them play better out of the gate. You want to see them go on a 10-play touchdown drive, 75-yard, 10-play touchdown drive to begin the game. Like, you want to get off that fast starter. Hey, heck, maybe start the game off with a flea flicker and hit Terry Godwin down the field for, a huge, huge play. I believe Terry Godwin scored on that. I forget. But yeah, go out there and score maybe a 1 or 2 play touchdown. Go score a touchdown within just a few plays. Hit an explosive right off the bat, right out of the gate. To me, Dan, aside from slow starts, what I want to see through this offense and what makes me think they can be even better is the deep ball. Carson Beck missed that one to Oscar Delp. Would have been a touchdown if he hit him in stride. He put a little bit too much mustard on it. I think he should have taken some velocity out of that football and lofted that one to kind of hit him in stride. You didn't need to throw it, as fast as possible. Didn't put as much spin on that ball, but you missed that one. You come back the next play and he tries to hit Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint on that dig, and it wasn't really Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint's fault. And I wouldn't even put it on Carson. Now, because they've hit that play before. When I went back and watched it from the All-22, Dan, the safety made a heck of a play. Safety was sitting over top, had I think maybe 3 yards of cushion, and he closed on that football before Carson even threw it. Just was closing on it. Right as Carson started to let that ball go, close on it, make a heck of a play. And it just shows you the safety expected it to come because Georgia had run it so much. That very similar concept. They've run it numerous times under Todd Monken, and they did it again here, and they got caught out. The guy made a heck of a play and picked that ball off. But Dan, the deep ball to me is a point where if Georgia starts hitting those explosive deep balls consistently, this offense is going to get even better. When I think back on last year, Dan, to me, we really didn't see Georgia's offense at its best, in my opinion, until that Tennessee game, where you hit Marcus Jackson-Saint in the end zone. You have that explosive play to Arian Smith. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the lead up to that, it felt like Georgia wasn't hitting those consistently. And then once they hit Tennessee, once they played Tennessee, from there on, if Georgia needed a deep ball, they got it. Like, you go to the Ohio State game, another deep ball to Arian Smith is hit, and it lights a spark for your team. I don't think we've seen the best of this Georgia offense. And when we start talking about a defense that may not be as good as we're used to, as we're accustomed to over the last few years, you're going to need an offense, as we talked about pre-show, that can win you a game in the shootout. Like, can they go down and score when you have to score? So far, it hasn't. The game. I guess this week was the first game where the game was on the line and they had to go score, and they did. But can they go do it in the biggest of stages? Can they go do it in the national championship? Can they go do it against Ohio State? Because we knew Stetson Bennett could do it because he did it before. But Carson Beck and this offense, we haven't seen that yet. So to me, getting those explosive plays, hitting those deep balls is just the next level of this offense. Because by all means, from the 20-yard line to the other 20-yard line, this Georgia offense has been able to move the ball and move it pretty freely. The only problem has been you're not really getting points all the time because of turnovers, because of missed field goals, because of blown assignments in the red zone. There's a next level to this offense that we've seen, and right now I think this offense is playing pretty dang good.
Well, the one thing that I think everybody wants to see is that explosive play. They want to see that 70-yard pass. They want to see that 75-yard touchdown run. And when is the last time that Georgia had a massive run? The last time I can remember a long run was DeAndre Swift run where Kirby was chasing him down the sideline. There has to be one more recent than that, but that's the only one I can remember.
I know exactly. Yeah, in the SEC championship, Kenny McIntosh, I don't remember how long it was, broke out that one against Ohio State. Didn't score on it, right. Which probably would have came to mind if he scored on it. The turf monster got him, but I don't remember. I need to look
Cook
that up.
had a long one too, right? Didn't Cook
yes,
have
he had that Alabama National Championship. I think it was 50-some yards. He got tackled inside the 5. But yeah, to your point, we haven't seen those as often.
Yeah, we need to be able to see a long run, like one of these running backs break one. And that's the other thing, is that we really haven't seen any deep shots down the field hit for home runs. And if you watch a lot of these other teams, that's where in today's college football, you're allowed to watch as much as you want to. And it's on, God knows it's on from 11 o'clock in the morning to, 1 o'clock or 1 a.m. in the morning. It's on. There's football on. You can watch all these different teams play. And a lot of teams have different types of offenses, a little bit more explosive offenses. But that's just like the one thing that Georgia's moving the ball, but it's like they have to really work to move the football right now. And I think that's the one thing that I would like to see is just some easy points where we're not having to work and just methodically get down the field. I want to see some shots taken. And I think you hit on that a little bit too, that we're just not really getting that right now. But you're right. That's the next phase of that. The offensive line has got to start mauling people again, creating these bigger holes, bigger running lanes for these running backs. Jonathan, we were texting earlier today, and he said the running game's not the problem. I love them, but yeah, it is. It kind of is, okay? Because we rushed for 107 yards. Our leading rusher had 76 yards on the ground. That's not dominant in any way, shape, or form. That's not dominant. You can't tell me our running game is absolutely fine when our leading rusher has 76 yards. Come on. That's not it. That's not what I'm talking about. I need, and then like you're like, okay, well, if you had 4 guys with like over 50 yards, I could understand that too, but you don't. You have a guy with 76, and your next guy has 25, and then your next guy has 6. Okay, like that running game is not elite. It's not there. It's not where we expect it to be. But the good news is we still have a lot of games to play and a lot of opportunities to get better.
Yeah, I think Dejon Edwards has potentially covered up for a lot of the mistakes. I mean, there are some runs that Dejon has where the hole he's trying to get through looks like he should only get a yard or two and ends up getting 4 or 5. Like, we're talking about, I don't know, it's been a little bit since I've watched a Georgia running back like him who can make chicken crap into chicken salad, to keep it PG there. Like, he hasn't had the greatest offensive line right now in run blocking. Like, we've had a lot of great, Georgia's had a lot of great backs over the years run behind some great offensive lines. DeAndre Swift had some great offensive lines. Nick Chubb and Sony Michel had some good offensive lines. Now, granted, their offensive line in 2015 and 14 probably wasn't as good as the offensive line in 17. Definitely wasn't. 16 wasn't that as good as 17. Then you go to somebody like,
go look at the
Xavier White
offensive
and James
lines.
Cook.
Go look at the offensive lines that Todd Gurley ran behind. There were no stars on that offensive line. They were not a good offensive line, and Todd Gurley had no problems. It's just a different type of back. We just don't have a Todd Gurley.
Yeah. But I will say this. Got to give some credit to Dejon Edwards because ever since that dude's come back, he's been absolutely electric. Like, when Georgia needs a few yards, when Georgia needs yards on the ground, Dejon Edwards got them.
My man had 76 yards. That's not electric. He had a 16. He had 19. He had a 16-yard rush. That accounts for a lot of his yards. He wasn't electric. Yes, he got some tough yards, and thank God we have him. But he's not electric, or hasn't been to this point. So
I disagree on that. I think for me, when I'm talking about electric, I'm talking creating, like, not everything's the in my book. What he does isn't like, he's not going to burst off the 75-yard big gainers. At least he hasn't yet. But as we've talked about, Georgia's had some great backs over the last few years that haven't done that. You know, he's just creating a lot more than it actually is, and I think that's covering up for the issues you have up front. Because, in my opinion, Tate Ratledge and Xavier Truss, a lot of the veterans on this offensive line haven't played up to the standard that everybody's kind of holding them to at this point. Dan, we got to talk some defense here. Talking about not playing to the standard. Maybe the standard's so high at this point that nobody's ever going to reach it. But Georgia's defense, this is probably the worst showing by a Georgia defense that I've seen in the regular season in I can't tell you the last game that they looked, this bad. I don't even want to say this bad, but I already told you to start the show. It's been 5 years since they've given up as many yards as they did on the ground. They gave up 219 yards rushing, only 88 yards passing, which is next to nothing. But it tells you one thing, and it tells you this. Auburn was running the ball. They were a run-dominant team. Everybody knew they were going to run the ball, and you still couldn't stop them. Now, I get it. They gave up 65 yards on the ground to a quarterback keeper, which not many quarterbacks have, really tried that against Georgia this year. But we can't just take that away from the offense because they made that play. Like, that play happened.
I think you could sum up our defensive troubles very quickly, and that would be we don't have Jalen Carter and we don't have Jordan Davis. Those were two extraordinary human beings. I've said it before, just like I just said it just now. They're extraordinary human beings. Other teams know we don't have them, and we have some guys up front that are pretty good. And we also lost Bear Alexander, whether you like him or not. Whether he was liked in the room or not, the guy's a playmaker, and he's doing so out at USC. And if you don't think so, go turn on the tape. He's making plays at USC. Maybe he's not consistent like, some of the other guys were, but he's a playmaker. We lost him, and we needed him. And we just, we don't have the mass that we have up front. We're getting pushed around a little bit, and they're getting some runs off on us early in the football game. Once we wear them down, we're fine, but they're getting some runs early in the football game, Harrison, and that's just the bottom line. You're on mute, big boy.
Dan, that kind of brings me to the last point. Is this a concern? Because when people look at the stat sheet and see 219 yards rushing, with a team like Georgia that in the past has given up, in some games only 30 yards rushing, that's a massive, massive red flag for me.
Well, I think it is a concern because you're not. You know what? Think about it this way, Harrison. Like, you said earlier that Georgia only had, what was it, 4 possessions in the first half in the Auburn game, right? Well, what would Georgia defenses do in the past where they would come out with their hair on fire and they would just 3 and out in the blink of an eye? Like, it was, you would lose 5 yards on first down, you would lose 7 yards on second down, then you would get a penalty because you couldn't handle the noise, and then all of a sudden you're punting 4th and 25, and and then Georgia's got the ball in their hands and only a minute and a half has gone off the clock. Well, that's not happening right now. They're running the football, and byproduct of running the football is what? The clock continues to run. And they're grinding out these drives where they may or may not score, but they're having, 13, 14, 17 play drives where they're running the football on us and they're methodically moving down the field and they're running off 8 minutes of clock time. And that's how we don't have drives because our defense is not aggressively getting off the field 3 and out like they have in the past. So, yeah, it's a concern. Get off and how many times has Georgia gotten into a third down situation where the other team gets off the, they don't get off the field? And, sometimes it's only a couple times, but Georgia used to be really, really good at getting off the field on third down. And it just doesn't seem like they are this year. Maybe it's, again, sometimes stats will tell you differently, but it just feels like they're not.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm looking over the stat sheet real quick here, Dan. I think at times, I think you're definitely right. It feels like they're not getting off the field on third down. And at other points, it feels like they're not even getting to third down at times. Auburn only had 6 third downs in the first half. First half alone, they had 6 third downs. They didn't convert any of them. Like, that's good, but they scored 10 points the first half and, got up on you. So to me, that tells me that they didn't get to it very often. It means they were driving, down the field. So I think it's a combination of both when it comes down to it. But you look at it, Georgia, it's tough, Dan. It really is tough because we're 5 games in at this point. I don't want to draw conclusions in week 5 because everything can change. Georgia can go out here next week and this coming week and blow out Kentucky, and then everybody's silenced. Georgia comes out and plays to the standard that everybody expects them to, and it's like, okay, well, maybe Georgia's like last year where when they need to turn it on, they turn it on. But I don't know. That's what. Let's talk about Kentucky real quick. Really, the big talking point here, Dan, is how the defense plays because Ray Davis, I believe he transferred from Vanderbilt, former Vanderbilt running back, transferred over to Kentucky in the offseason and has 76 carries, 594 yards, 8 tutties. Dude rushed for 280 yards by himself with 3 touchdowns. Had 4 touchdowns total, had 1 as a receiver on 26 carries. That is impressive considering I think Auburn had just as many rushing yards as he did against Georgia as he did this past week against Florida. Dan, we talked about this matchup in the offseason when talking about, some of Georgia's toughest matchups like this game. Georgia and Kentucky. For Georgia, it's always an ugly game, it feels like, as of late. Just for whatever, like last year especially, it was 16 to what? 10? Georgia won 16 to 10, and you're like, what the heck just happened? Like, you go from scoring 40 to 50 points and blowing teams out to you go on the road to Kentucky and you score 16. I don't know how to deal. I don't know how to look at this matchup, Dan, because if it comes down to it and Kentucky's going to be the same team they've always been and try to run the ball on you, put a hat on a hat, and try to win the line of scrimmage, it's going to be an early test for Georgia to figure out have they fixed their issues from this past week. Spread's 14.5, Dan. I think you and I are in agreement. I'm not touching Georgia covering. Right now, if I had to pick, I'd pick Kentucky plus 14.5 to cover because I really do think they can make this game ugly in the sense that this is going to be low scoring. Georgia's not going to have very many possessions, and they're going to force Georgia's offense to be efficient from the get go.
You know, there's a 14-year-old kid walking around, and he's never seen Georgia lose to Kentucky in his entire life. Think about that. There's a freshman in high school that's never seen Georgia lose to Kentucky. So it's a 13-year winning streak. Georgia 62-10 against Kentucky. 2009 was the last time that Kentucky won in Athens. And like you said, it's a 14.5 point favorite. Georgia hasn't covered it all this year. That's an issue, but it's only an issue until it's not an issue. And Georgia has played Kentucky pretty well at home. It's like every time we go to Kentucky, it always seems like weather plays a factor, like whether it's really, really cold or rainy or something like that. I think the one thing you have to understand is that these are young men, kids, for lack of a better term, and they hear things. They're on social media, whether they say they are or they aren't. It doesn't matter. They are. They hear these things, and they've been getting crapped on a lot this season, not just this week, but all year. I just have a feeling this is a get right game. I think Georgia has everything they need. They have all the talent in the world. We heard all preseason long about how this could sneakily be one of the best defenses we've ever had. That is turned out to be patently untrue. But they are fast. They are talented. That part is true. So, maybe they start playing and really turn up the volume, so to speak, and really put it to Kentucky. This would be a great opportunity because Kentucky has got a lot of eyes on them right now after that smackdown they just put down on Florida, which, good God, that felt good, right? I'm not even a Kentucky fan. I had no skin in the game, but to watch Florida get beat like that was a lot of fun. Sorry, Kentucky, but it's our turn to put the smackdown on you because Georgia needs a get right game. And this is a perfect opportunity with the nation's eyes on them. It's a night game. Georgia tends to play well at night. It's like Georgia kind of needs a spark. And I know Kirby doesn't like to do this, so he won't do it. But it's almost like this is a perfect opportunity to break out the black jerseys, right? Because I know it's fake funk, it's fake juice, or and everybody's like, "That's stupid. You don't need it." But it's like these guys at Georgia right now, they do need it. Like they do because they're bored or something. Something's not right. And I just think like do something to hype these kids up. Like I said, night game on television. They did it for a night game on ESPN against Auburn, and we beat the dog out of Auburn that day. So I don't know. Let's just do something just to spice it up. And I'm not saying do the thing where you shh, don't tell nobody, and then you sneak out sneak out of the locker room right before kickoff with black jersey. Like, don't do that. Like, if you're gonna wear black, wear black. But these kids just seem like they need something. They need a little cayenne pepper.
Dan, speaking about the sneaking, don't tell anybody about the black jerseys. I have hope every time there are rumors that Georgia's going to wear black jerseys when they go out for warm-ups and they're in their regular, red jerseys, that they're going to come back out of the tunnel with the black jerseys. Like, I still hold that hope that it's going to happen again, but it may not be this headband that's going to do it again. I still hold hope. So I'm not going to stop holding out hope. I don't think they will do that again under the Kirby Smart, but every time there's just something about, something in the air, whether it's Georgia's media team teasing it or, people in the media or fans saying this is a good weekend. Every time I see them come out in the reds when they're supposed to be wearing blacks, according the black jerseys to somebody, according to somebody, I just have hope that it's going to, change at halftime. But hey, that's not the way they do things in Athens right now.
I have a question for you. So, I mean, we see black jerseys. I mean, they're okay. Like, it doesn't bother me that much. What do you think about the all white, the white helmet, the white shirt, the white pants, like that all white that the recruits wear? Bro, that is nasty. If they wear that in the game, I mean, woof, I love that look. Like, and I've heard so many people hate on that look, but all white, the white on white on white, come on.
I'm cool with it. The white helmet looks especially cool. I got another color rush. There are some teams that have the all whites. They call it the stormtrooper look, and I dig it. What about the all red with the red pants, red top, red helmet? Are you a fan?
I'm out.
You're out. Could we do white tops with red pants? Bring it back.
Oh, the ones that wore against Arkansas were. I love those. Those were beautiful.
I'd bring
Well,
those back. I would bring those back in an instant. I would love to see them wear red pants one game a year if that's it. Look,
I don't like the silver breeches. I'm out on the silver breeches. I've never liked them.
dang, I don't mind them. I don't mind them. You brought up the Cowboys wearing the Carolina bluish pants.
That's the
I would much rather
funkiest.
see them. I would rather see them wear silver, in my opinion.
Ooh,
Uh,
Rudes. That's a
that's definitely
throwback.
interesting.
That's a.
Definitely interesting.
Well, Georgia at one time wore a silver helmet. That is a super throwback.
What about a red G logo in the middle? Back in, I don't remember what year was it where they had that. They had the red G logo with the white outline.
Oh,
It was. I think it was early 2000s they wore that. Roots, maybe you can tell me, or no, maybe it was back in the 90s they had that. I wouldn't. I like the black G, on the white background that we have that Georgia has now. I don't know if I'd change it back to the red G in the middle of the field, but hey, I will take the red pants if we could just please wear the black jerseys once a year and wear the red pants once a year. Just make it. Tennessee has their checkered game where they checker the stadium one time a year. They have their black jerseys, black jerseys at home. Dan, what do we think? I like Tennessee's black jerseys. They look pretty cool.
I like their black jerseys, but I like their smoke grays. Those are fire
Ooh,
with the
I'm kind of
orange
out on
pants.
the
I think it
smoke
was.
ones. I'm
Ooh,
out on those, but I don't
Tennessee.
mind their black jerseys.
I understand why kids pick Tennessee. They got some pretty cool uniforms.
Man, if I want to go to school for uniforms, I'd go to Oregon, hands down.
I'm bored with Oregon's uniforms.
They don't wear as many like different combos as they once used to under Dan
Yeah, but
Lanning
they're
now.
like over the top and dumb now. Like it's like they were cool in the beginning, but now it's just like they just do dumb stuff now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Anyways, guys,
somebody. Oh yeah, all right, go on.
no, you're good. You're good. Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
Was it Notre Dame that was wearing like the funky green helmets the other day? Those were weird.
I didn't like their green. I didn't like their all green against.
Notre Dame, okay, Notre Dame is the most traditional school in college football history, and they're wearing like random. I don't know. Oh yeah, my wife was like she was hype about those baby blues. She was like, "Oh my god!" I think they call them ices or whatever, ice
Or
uniform.
isn't it powder? I thought they called
No,
it.
but I think
Maybe
they
it
call
is.
them ice blue or something like that. But like, even my son was like, "Dude, I would go to Ole Miss right now, like if they offered me, because those things are so badass."
I'm with you on that one, Rudes. I'm with everybody on that one. The baby blues can stay. Shoot, they can wear those as often as they want. It feels up to me. Anyways, guys, y'all got our rant on jerseys. A little off tangent there. Kirby, if you're listening, black jerseys once a year, red pants. Just
All
once
whites.
a year. I wouldn't mind the all whites. I don't.
Well, you got it. You good?
I don't know what just happened. My microphone changed for some odd reason. Okay.
Mhm.
Right at the end of the show, people. Anyways, guys, I'm your Sereno. Alongside me, Sudan Kylie. Episode 103 of the Top Top podcast. We are here with you every Tuesday at 7:30 live here on the YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Rate, review us if you're listening on podcast. We are out on every platform imaginable. I'd seem. I don't know. What do people use these days? I think a lot of people are using the Apple Podcast and then there's
Yeah,
Spotify.
Spotify.
But we're out on those two platforms. If that's where you listen to us, rate and review us. Give us 5 stars. We appreciate you. We appreciate Rude's giving us 5 stars in the chat. Let's
Hey,
go.
we love you, Roots. You're a 5-star.
Agreed. Anyways, guys, we'll see you back next week. Dan, real quick. Georgia, Kentucky, 14.5 points. What does Dan Kyler say score prediction?
I'm gonna go 38-17.
Going for Georgia, 38-17. That would be a good showing. That would be a really good showing. Georgia scores 38 against a team like Kentucky where they usually score like, I don't know, barely 20. I'm gonna ride with you. I'm gonna ride in the same ballpark of you. I'm going Georgia 24-10. They cover, which is very
No, they
dangerous
don't.
considering I just put 24 to no, they don't. You're right. I was thinking I don't know why I had it at 17. I'm going 24-10. Just one of those ugly games. where Georgia maybe has a couple fourth quarter touchdowns or something like that to kind of put distance on them. But I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch, but just another one of those Halloween showings. I don't know why, but I would love to see us continue to play Kentucky on Halloween weekend as they have in the past year. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for episode 103 of the Top Ball Talk podcast. We'll see you back next week.